All right, all right. Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday night at 8 p.m., so we're here with another installment of the Greenwich Good News Game Plan with Coach Joe Kelly. How we doing, Joe?
I'm doing good, Tim. I see you got one of those fancy microphones there. You
Yeah.
keep telling me I got to get one, but I can't figure out which one to get. So I've got to do that one of these days. So it's good news for Tim because you have that really cool microphone, and hopefully good news for me if I pick. Maybe you could give me the address of that place that makes that microphone, and I could get one myself. That would be way cool.
I'll share the link for sure.
Fantastic. Now, Tim, share some good news with us. You know we like to start the show with some good news, and you're always full of good news. What do you got for us?
Well, I don't know if anybody missed it, but it is Groundhog Day, so we had halftime on winter. We got 6 more weeks of winter to go.
Well, Tim, that is my number one good news question: is that the groundhog ceremony in Pennsylvania was kind of interesting, but I always get confused. Now, it was a cloudy day. Yet they claim that groundhog, now they didn't notice it, but the groundhog had to tell them that he saw his shadow, which means another 6 weeks of winter, which to them seemed like good news. I don't know why, but I'll take it because it's a good news show. So how does that work now? He sees his shadow or says he sees his shadow? You know all about groundhogs, don't you, Tim?
The truth is, I actually watched the video clip a few minutes ago for the first time, and they put 2 scrolls down in front of him on the tree stump. And he sniffs one or the other, and they pick it up and read the scroll. And for the last 106 years, he has picked 6 more weeks of winter.
Well, we'll see if we can get the groundhog on this show going forward. I think he'd make a good guess, possibly better than some of the guests we've had on already. Maybe not. I don't know. But he seems to draw a crowd down there. But I tell you, though, and here's one thing we have to worry about with our guests coming on today. If the Groundhog Day acts as if the movie does, and we have to replay the interviews with our 2 guests, Peter Bernstein and David Langhorne, for forever, time and time again. It could wear on somebody's nerves or give them loads of pleasure, all depending on how this program goes. So let's hope it's the give them pleasure type thing. So we'll hope for that and hope for the best. Also, Tim, 2 more things I want to talk about. Good news. It's Mom Kelly's birthday today, 91 years old. So
nice.
we're celebrating Mom's birthday, and that snowstorm was awesome. Did you get out and shovel it all during that snowstorm, Tim?
I did shovel a few times. That was a lot of snow.
It was the lightest snow in the history of snow. Did you notice that? You just take a big shovelful. You felt like Superman, just lifting it up and throwing it. It was great. So it was really easy to shovel the stuff away.
That's why I went out early and I took care of the light stuff. And then towards the end, I sent the boys out. You know, my favorite saying is, when you have 5 kids, it's the most expensive way to get your walk shoveled for free.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, speaking of shoveling, let's bring David Langhorne in. David Langhorne is our first guest. He's on location. David, you okay? You smoke? You're choking on? Are you okay? Are you okay?
I'm all good, thank you. I just had to look out the window a little bit and see if Box 24 was nearby.
Oh, perfect. Well, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you. We love your personality. I'm so happy to be able to spend a little time with you on this program. Now, you and I met as you support most projects at the school. You get up there and speak so enthusiastically about these programs, about the projects we're working on. Tell us some of the things that you really appreciate, the good news about your involvement with supporting the schools.
I think so far the best news that's coming out of this is there is actually activity now. In the past we've challenged with activities, but now we've got lots of activity, lots of guys working, lots of guys pulling together, lots of neighbors pulling together for numerous different reasons, some for A reason, some for B reason, some for C reason, but we're all pulling in the same direction. And particularly the remediation at the high school, which is critical, particularly the new stands at the high school, which is critical. And by the way, don't forget my shed, Joe.
I could never forget your shed.
You better not forget my shed. I swear to God, I'll burn your house down. And more importantly, also, I hear through the grapevine there is a chance that the other schools will, in fact, get their fields as required over the next few years. And that is the best news we could have because the kids need it. They deserve it. The town needs it, and it deserves it.
Absolutely. The urgency's there. It's clear focus. There's no dispute amongst the board members of making sure that these things get done because we understand the importance of these things. We know that it's good for our town, good for our community, good for our kids. We have to put our kids as the highest priority. Absolutely. So it's certainly good for the kids. But no, I certainly enjoy hearing your enthusiasm when it comes to those meetings, and occasionally those phone calls when you come storming in. And at first, I remember I would try to have to diffuse you a little bit, and then I realized just absorbing your enthusiasm was much better than trying to diffuse you. So I do enjoy that enthusiasm. Now, David, tell us a little about yourself, though, because I really don't know you very well. I know you from your enthusiasm towards better things at the schools. Tell us give me a little bit of your background, because when you first started talking to me, I thought you had a speech impediment, but really it's an English accent. So basically tell us about yourself and where you're from.
Well, what's really interesting, when I first arrived in America in 1986, I thought everybody had a speech impediment. So that was kind of an interesting twist. So a friend of mine in 1986 made me a bet that I wouldn't move to America. I was 23 years old. And I said, really? He's bet me $100. I said, all right, I'll do that. I had like $4 to my name. So I was like, perfect. I got a major rate of return on that. So I got on an airplane, came over here. And I will tell you this, 1986, when I got on a plane in London, you would have thought that I was Christopher Columbus. Mother, father, sister, brothers, aunts, uncles, they all showed up at the airport. Like I was actually making a major project. Nice. It doesn't hit you when you become an immigrant. It doesn't hit you till halfway across the Atlantic when you look at your paper ticket and it says London, New York. And there's no New York, London.
No New York, London. We had our first foreigner on our show last week. We had a Canadian. So now we're really stretching things out some by going with an English immigrant. Now, are you an American citizen now?
Not yet.
Okay.
So I arrived in New York City at Newark Airport, a bastion of success. And I showed up there and I got out of the airport terminal. And I said to the taxi driver, I need to go to 96 and First. And the guy looked at me and said, which one? I go, what are you talking about? I said, 96 and First Avenue. Oh, no. He goes, is that in New York? Is that in Brooklyn? Is that in Queens? Is that in Staten Island? Is that in New York City? I'm like, New York City's got to be. So I hadn't been in a building over like 10 stories in my whole life.
Oh, nice.
My buddy had an apartment on the 18th story. So I got up there and I go, all right, this is pretty cool. Most of that first night I was lighting paper and dropping it out the window and watching it drop to the bottom.
Sounds like fun. Was that an 18-story walk-up or was there an elevator?
No, that was an elevator. It was a nice building. Nicest building I ever lived in up that point.
Excellent.
And then the gun shop started ringing out north of 96th Street. So I'm like, you know what? I got to make a better decision here. I'm going to go to bed. So I went to sleep. But the problem was I had $1,500 in a cloud of dust. So I bought a 1979 Mercury Monarch, the biggest car I ever owned, which was fantastic. I used to drive with my legs spread across the bench seat, looking like I was, what I would know now as a drug dealer. It was fantastic.
Nice.
Lo and behold, but I didn't have enough money to get myself an apartment, and I only had 3 months.
Right.
So I got myself a little job out at the airport, out of Kennedy, selling air freight. And I traveled all around the country. And there is a point to this story, which I think is well worth noting. Good news story. Good. I looked at 100 apartments. I couldn't afford any. I ended up on Staten Island, at the bottom of Toad Hill Road and Victory Boulevard. And I walked into this Mike's house. He had a 2-story house. He and his wife lived on the 2nd story. And I said, okay. He said, it's $250 a month, first month, last month, security deposit. I said, I don't have enough money. He said, you know what? I like you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 months free rent. You give me $250, and that'll be the security deposit. I don't need first month, last month, and you stay here as long as you like. And I tell you this today, that man changed my life. Nice. Because I was telling you, I was on the cusp of having to go home. Call dad and mom and go, by the way, I'm done. I can't make it. I ran out of money, and this is my end of the road.
Do you stay in touch with him?
No, sir. And I will tell you this, and I've said this to 1,000 people. Random acts of kindness are the moral of the story of that story, and I've lived that as a major part of my life ever since that day. So the good news there is I'm still here. That's bad news for you guys, but here I am.
No, it's to our advantage, and I agree with that so much. Where I love to, the second part of my life, first part was kind of hustling, trying to also try to achieve some level of success. But as I started reaching that, I said, now I got to give back some, and it's all about paying it forward, and that's what I always tried to explain to everybody. I said, you know what? If I do something nice for you, I want you to do something nice for somebody else. I don't want anything for it. If you go around collecting chips and trying to get them back one day, that doesn't have the same feeling as sending people out and doing a really good thing for them. So that person that helped you out the way they did, I mean, that's really what I aspire for anyway, to be able to help somebody in a little bit of a way, sometimes in a significant way. And I don't want anything for it. I just want them to go and be as good a person as they can be, and that's all I want from it. So it's good that person contacted you. It's good for us that you're involved in our community in Greenwich, Connecticut. Now, how did you get from Staten Island to Greenwich, Connecticut?
That's a long and winding road. There's not enough Jack Daniels to tell you that story. But I will tell you this. So between once I met my wife in New York City, I managed to save up some money. I moved to 55th Street. Then I moved to Cascab in the winter of 2000, and with my wife, and we created a life for ourselves here in town. In 2001, we bought a house way up back in the woods, and we became agricultural workers for several years, cleaning the forest, which was fun. And then when the children arrived, and here we are. I mean, I have a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old, and a 22-year-old from a previous experience who was in Montana. And it is a wonderful, wonderful life that we have been blessed enough and fortunate enough to have been on the recipients of.
Well, I noticed your enthusiasm towards baseball. Tell us of your success with your children in baseball.
Well, when I first got here, I used to play a little bit of rugby back in the day, and cricket. And so lo and behold, when I got here, a friend of mine took me to a couple of football games, and I was bored out of my mind watching that. So another buddy said to me, "Why don't you come and watch a baseball game?" I said, "Are you kidding me? I've seen that on TV. That's a disaster." Lo and behold, he took me. He said, "Listen, you got to come." His family had tickets for 1,000 years, and he gave me a scorebook. And he said, "Here's what you're going to do. You sit down and score this for the entire game." I'm not doing that. Yeah. Lo and behold, I sat down, I scored the book, and I believe that without a shadow of a doubt, baseball is the single greatest game ever invented by any human anywhere ever.
Nice.
And as a result, when Miles came along, he and I shared that enthusiasm. And since he's been 4 or 5 years old, he's had this overwhelming desire to play Major League Baseball. And with any luck, and if all the suns and moons and stars align, he will be successful. My daughter is an avid golfer and a field hockey player. And Luke, the little one, he plays baseball and plays a little golf and does all the things he's supposed to be doing. So all in all, it's
no rugby for the kids. No, go to the English heritage with rugby's dominant.
I played a game of rugby on Randall's Island, way back when I first arrived here.
Sure.
And I was so disheartened because the ref didn't know the rule, and I thought I was going to get killed. So, but in between fighting with the referees and the other players, it was a little bit past my pay grade.
I'm shocked.
Now they've made it soft.
Shocked you'd be fighting with the referees. I can't believe that. Not you.
It's shocking, right? But the worst part is they've watered the game down now. They're like, don't touch this guy, don't touch that guy, easy on this. No more malls. Yeah, there's no more rocks. There's no more malls. It's all very touchy-feely. It's not. No, that's not rugby.
Well, David, now we're going to bring Peter Bernstein in to join us in this conversation. He's had the fortunate opportunity to listen to you. Can we call it ramble on for a while, or tell your tale? What can we say? But whatever it was very enjoyable. Now, Peter is going to ask a question or two of you, because now, David, you must be. There's going to be hundreds of people out there with loads of questions. You'll find on your way home tonight when you drive back and bring your son home. Well, Peter might have one for you now. Peter, do you have one for David?
Yeah, sure. David, I wonder what brings you out to our meetings to talk to us, right? We sit there lonely without you, so I want to know what it is that gets your energy up.
I have 3 things in my life, right? I have my wife, I have my children, and I have my friends' children. Okay? That's what I got. If I keel over and die tomorrow, there is not a child that Miles hasn't played baseball with that I don't really appreciate and love.
That's great.
And that's the reason I do it, because I believe that without the facilities, I believe in a very simple philosophy, and I tell the children this all the time: physiological, opportunity, and work. If you have one, you'll fail. If you have two, you'll fail. If you have all three, you got half a chance.
I like
and that's
it.
pretty much what it comes down to. Same thing with the high school. I called Mr. Mayo, and I'm like, listen, I'd like to come and talk to the freshmen. I'd like to stand up in front of them, because I never went to college. I'd like to stand up in front of those freshmen and tell them, listen, do not blow up your freshman year. Everybody says your junior year is the most important, the most important, the most important. That's nonsense. You take a 2.2 in your freshman year, you're cooked. You can't get to a 4.
That's
and nobody ever tells the freshmen how important getting good grades in your freshman year is. And it's a relative, it's a scale.
Except for the 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, and 1st grade teachers might have told them. But
it's all different when you hit the high school. David's right.
It's a whole different pool. Correct.
Absolutely.
And so I'm grateful to Peter for that work that he does to try and get these freshmen to realize, do not blow yourself up, for goodness sake. Whatever you do, don't blow yourself up. And I've seen it. I've seen the 1.9. I've seen the 2.0 in the freshman year. And the kids, all of a sudden, they're pretty smart enough. Next thing you know, they get a 3.4 in their sophomore year, but they've only got a 2.6. Yeah, and you can't dig yourself out of the pothole. No, it's like New York, like the Belt Parkway in 1986. It's a disaster.
Exactly. Hard to recover from that. Now, David, we try to have one last parting word of enthusiasm about something that's very important to you, and I'm going to help you with this. I think it has something to do with the 6.25 square feet extra we need for your baseball shed. Could you please talk a little about your baseball shed?
So we have a baseball shed that's an 8x10 baseball shed at the high school. The thing is run down like you've never seen. It's jammed to the rafters. I'm 100% certain it's a home for retired mice, and it's a disaster. The boys can't store their stuff in there, so we have to get job boxes to put all the stuff in. Now, I went to a place called Opelika. All right? Now, you might want to look that up. That is the first stop on the train between New Orleans and Atlanta for the slaves when they came in. And it's really a very moving place. And everybody should go there. It's in Alabama. It's in the middle of nowhere. Their high school field was spectacular. And I would advocate as much as I can. I'd like an 8x20 or a 10x20 shed for the foreseeable future, built beautifully, perfectly there, easy to maintain, easy to clean for the future generations of boys that go through that school. And that's what I'm a real believer in that. And I think it's a very important aspect to be done. And I know Joe, on a good news side of it, is trying to, I think the word is finesse these days, that onto the additional phase 2 of the football stadium.
Correct.
So that's what I'm a believer in that. And I really want it. And it's something that I'll go down swinging. And I'm not going to be that parent that doesn't come to those meetings after my child has graduated, because I believe that's a huge challenge that we all have to keep parents involved once their children leave.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for letting us know what you are. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
To you. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks very much. We'll see you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Peter.
Lots of energy from David, Peter. What about that?
It's always great. It's funny. People who get up and talk to us at board meetings, they wonder if we're listening. We're listening. And I love people with the energy like David, who shows up. By the time we get some of this stuff done, his kids will probably be gone. It's the same with the work we do, right? You do it because it needs to be done. And it's great that people like David step up. That's what makes Greenwich special.
Well, you give us a 4-year shift for a reason. You can't get out of it for 2 years because it's hard to get anything done. You just got to push it in a direction that you think is right, and take all the input you can from the community and make sure you're going in the right direction. So it's been certainly an interesting time. The first year with all the kind of fun stuff going on, we'll say with my first year. But Peter, I do say I've enjoyed working with you. I early on we had to feel each other out a little bit, which I enjoy doing that with people, exchanging ideas and making sure somebody can listen and talk and can take a jab to the chin every once in a while and give one. So I earned, you've earned I've earned your respect, or you've earned my respect in doing that.
It's mutual, Joe. It's mutual.
And I certainly enjoyed that. So, and your passion for the schools is true. And I certainly, I don't know of anyone who spends as much time on looking at, thinking about, working towards the better of our kids than certainly you do. And you're happy to lead our Board of Education to a positive way. So that's great. And it's
really need a new hobby.
Exactly. Well, I watch you talk about all the meetings you attend, the BET, the RTM, the BOE. I didn't even know before I became the unlikely board member that even these such things existed. I didn't know what the BET was, RT. I didn't know any of that stuff, but I only got involved, say 2 years ago or so, had to learn all that sort of stuff. But there's a whole lot of meetings that go on, and I think you attend just about all of them.
Yeah, although you've done great. You've jumped right in. You've been working with the planning and zoning department on the stadium, which are a couple less meetings a month for me. So I appreciate it.
No, it's good. It's fun. Just a feeling of accomplishment. Also, having done a number of private projects myself, and understanding or hearing why this cost overruns, delays, all that sort of stuff with public projects, I always said to myself, I'd like to understand why there's so many issues when it comes to a public project. And now, working my first public project, I fully understand it's not my project. It's
everybody's, and it's process all the time, right? There's no shortcuts. There's no easy way out. But if you roll your sleeves up, you do the work, you show up, ultimately we're going to get where we need to go. And that's why we've got to keep driving it. So I'm 7 years in on this. You're a year in. And I'm going to come back to you in year 7 because you're going to do 2 terms, right, Joe?
I don't know about that. I'm an unlikely Board of Ed person. You're more likely than I am with a doctorate in law. So you're more of a student than I am. I'm not your student type. I'm more of your, I guess, enough student types on the Board of Ed. I bring a different perspective, I guess I could say. So it's I try to do my best in figuring out the school stuff, and I do my best in applying myself in the other stuff. So.
Well, like all boards, you want a good mix of people, right? That have different skills, different temperaments, different interests. And, honestly, it's lucky that you get that mix of people here, right? Sometimes it's who shows up, sometimes it's who's recruited. But it's always good to have everybody kind of doing their thing and coming together. And that's what you hope for the board. And we've been trying to do that for the last couple of years. So.
Absolutely. Well, we met years ago on the soccer fields because our kids are the same age.
Absolutely.
And I remember you coming up to me and you were marketing yourself because you wanted to run for the Board of Education. And I was so impressed by you going to each person on the sidelines of the soccer field and presenting yourself and saying, I'd like to do this. And you gave the reasons why you'd like to do it. And I said, I like that fella. He's got a good, he knows what he wants to do. He knows why he wants to do it. And he's not afraid to tell people how he wants to do it. So we got to know each other then. We didn't know each other well over the years, but then now that we're working together, we got to know each other. But you know what I didn't get a chance to do in our time working together, because it's all school is what we talk about. Let's find out about Peter Bernstein. Let's find out where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school, what you did when you were younger. Give me a little about yourself, please.
Sure. So you caught me on the field then. I actually was a soccer coach for the town's youth program. And what's interesting is you spent all those years coaching rugby, and Kathleen Stowe's on the board, coaches softball for the town. So, it's a lot of people with that kind of experience. I actually grew up in north central Massachusetts, north of Worcester, probably about 50 minutes outside of Boston. My dad actually was a college professor, a state college professor. And the one thing I was told not to go into was education. Kind of funny, right?
It's ironic.
Yeah, it is. It's very funny. And I ended up becoming the PTA president at Ham Ave when my kids were there. And my dad had been a PTA president. He was like the first male PTA president in our city. And, when I was doing it here, it actually was Mike Pacino and I. So Mike and I had a great time because it was basically these two guys and all of the moms. And, it was a fun experience. And when I was done there, basically decided, I wasn't done giving. Like, I wanted to keep volunteering. The Board of Ed kind of made sense as the next level, and that's where I met you. Before I came to Greenwich, I was actually living in Washington, D.C., and my wife was living here. She actually went to college with my sister. We've known each other for, I don't want to say how many years, but a really, really, really long time. And, when we were deciding where we were going to be, I like to tell people that I lost the coin toss and I ended up here. But it really was a little more than that. No, I know it's not true. My wife's probably watching now. My in-laws actually lived in Stamford at the time. They now live in Greenwich. And my father-in-law is actually very involved in a lot of activities, volunteer activities. So that's a great thing. But when I would come up here, she would take me to see the library, Todd's Point, the golf course, which was great. I love the Griff. The amenities of the town, realizing how close you are to New York City, just what a nice life it is here and how good the schools were. And that was actually one of those funny things. Like when somebody says that to you before you're even married and you have kids and they're like, oh, the schools here are amazing. You don't really think about it, but guess what? It's what draws people to Greenwich. And it really was for me one of those things that I said, well, let's see, I'm living in Arlington, Virginia right now. I'm looking at houses in DC for us, but you never go to the DC schools. So having that was a big boost, and I'm happy to say, like, my kids have had an amazing experience, and we have almost 9,000 kids in our district, and that's why we do what we do, right? It's not just about the ones that you've got living in your house that go to the Greenwich Public Schools.
Absolutely.
It's about all of them. Of course, the ones that are in your house ask, is there a snow day tomorrow? Are we remote tomorrow? Right?
Exactly. But I'll tell you, though, I've got a funny story about me in the public schools because my wife, we were living in England at the time. I achieved some success in my career. And my wife, I grew up in Queens, so there's no moving back to Queens. But my neighborhood was kind of the place you kind of can't move back to. And my wife growing up in Westchester, when you do well, in Westchester 23 years ago or so when we moved here, that's where you go. You go to Greenwich. That's you're the Beverly Hillbillies.
The pinnacle of success, right?
Exactly. So we moved here, and it was mid-semester, so we couldn't get into the. We understand it was synonymous in our mind that you come to Greenwich, you go to the private schools, and that's sort of how it works. But we went to Julian Curtis, and we put 2 kids into school there, and 2 of the 3, and with 3 at the time. Now we have 4, but at the time we put 2 of the 3 there. And my wife just and some of the friends she made that first couple of months there are some of the best friends that she has right now. So we said, you know what? Greenwich, Connecticut's a great town. It's eclectic. We have all sorts of kids in the school. JC was fantastic. We said, you know what? We're not interested in the private schools. We're going to go with the public schools because we think it's better for our kids. So we went the whole distance with our kids through the public schools, thinking originally the private schools was what you do when you move to Greenwich, Connecticut. But we had a great experience. We still have a sophomore in the high school. It's still good because you meet real people. You're not just a certain kind of people, and maybe sometimes the private schools might be just maybe not diverse as diverse as the public schools. It's still a great experience in the private schools, but we wanted diversity. If we're going to live in a town like Greenwich, Connecticut, we wanted our kids to get educated in a diverse environment. Now, don't get me wrong, the private schools are great, but the public schools are great too in our town.
Well, and what's amazing, because every year as a board, we look at the course of study guide for the high school. And if anybody hasn't, you ought to look at it. We're running a small college, right? The breadth of courses that we offer, it's like upwards of 200 courses. So, if you're interested in science, here's, 20 different science courses. If you're interested in math, you can go much further than I was able to go in school. And trust me, I didn't want to go any further than I went. But there's so much for every student. And it really is amazing that we offer more AP courses, I think, than most of the public high schools in Connecticut, and the private schools don't even come close to what we offer. So, it really is a difference maker for a lot of our students. We have kids that go on to do amazing things, whether they're going Ivy League, whether they're playing Division I sports, whether they're going into music, art, literature. It doesn't matter what they're going into. They've got the basis to go out and do that. We get kids who get commissions to the military academies. We're
so much to be proud of in our schools. And I'll tell you, though, as you know, I had the wonderful opportunity to actually work at the high school as a coach. And my usual day would be my day job I would do. And you have stress sometimes with your day job, and there'd be tension and some anxiety. But I know the second I got over to that high school, the camaraderie amongst the coaches, the kids just open-minded, ready to just do stuff, the athletic director helping out where he could, and just the whole atmosphere at the school was a happy place where kids just thrived. Obviously, this was outside of COVID. We have to get through that before we can get back to that happy place. But it's certainly a great environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you were doing a very important service here. So we basically don't think about just academics for our kids. We want well-rounded students when they come out, right? We want them to contribute in all areas of society. We want them to be engaged. We want them to volunteer. Actually, tomorrow I'm having lunch with the high school student government, right? Well, it's a virtual lunch. I'll be sitting right here in front of this computer. But to hear that with the work that they're doing, the culture they're trying to bring to the school, the camaraderie, even in this weird time, right? They're trying to find activities to bring people together, and that's what you were doing with the kids in the rugby program, and that's what we see in music and in art and in everything else, every extracurricular, whether it's Model UN or something else. There's enough activities for everybody, and we try to make sure every kid is involved in something, and that helps them beyond just what they're learning in the classroom. There are a lot of kids that don't do the team sports that are still getting team stuff in different varieties. It's great.
And then we have the internship as well. The seniors have that last semester an internship, and I have run out of my company here an internship for one of those students every year since I was involved in coaching at the school. And not just the coaching side, but the actual having a kid come in and actually have an interest in the business. I do say there was one specific kid, I won't mention his name right now, but he actually went into the field that I'm in because he was so inspired by the internship. And that's so, as a person hosting an internship, that certainly makes you feel good.
Yeah, totally an amazing experience, right? So I don't know if you can see, you've asked before about the presidential seal that I've got in my office behind me. I don't know if I can, there it is. There it is. So when I was in college, I had the opportunity to work at the U.S. Trade Representative. It's actually part of the Executive Office of the President. And so I got to do amazing stuff as a student. And for me, that was it. I went to school in Washington, D.C. I wanted to be in Washington, D.C. I went to law school just so I could get back to Washington. And I spent a long time being there and doing that fun stuff because of the experience. So it's amazing that, if you can give students these kind of life experiences, and we're very lucky, that we're able to do that we have the businesses that'll take these kids and let them learn and let them see how things operate. So it's part of, it's part of being in Greenwich, right?
Absolutely. We had, Marshall Cooper, he was on the show a couple of weeks ago. He had served in the White House briefing the presidents when this was George Bush 1. When he woke out of his bed in the morning, he was in charge, or on the team, not in charge of, but on the team that actually informed him of what went on overnight. That was pre-texts, pre-cell phones, all that stuff. So he was talking the same thing where he left Washington and he wanted to get back, but his career brought him in a slightly different direction. He's an entrepreneur now, owns a couple of businesses, but he also had the same. So I thought you might have known him or could relate to his.
Yeah, I don't know him well, but it's a great story. Actually, the current press secretary for President Biden is a Greenwich High School graduate, right? So if anybody out there knows her, we got to bring her back to talk to the students. Like, these are the kind of people we want, encouraging our students to go on and do great things.
Absolutely. Now, Peter, we after we get to know you a little bit like we did, because I heard some things I didn't know about, so I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy that our community can get to know you a little better with all the good work you do. Is there something that maybe you find quite important that you want to talk about a little bit? Because as I said, we reach about 1,000, maybe 1,500 local people, and if there's something that's really important to you, please express that now.
Well, right now, I'm done on the Board of Ed in November, right? And we've got to find people that are interested in participating, whether they be on the board, whether they're going to be engaged at the PTA level, coaching some of the sports programs, or coming in and talking to students. This all works because of a sense of community. If everybody kind of steps in and pitches in, it's that much better. So, just keep encouraging people to participate. That's really what makes this town different. It's what makes this town special. Sometimes, people get a little too engaged and they make their volunteer job their real job. I do my day job and then I do my night job. That's how I view the Board of Ed sometimes. But without volunteers, none of this works, right? So we need people to step up, to be engaged, be active. And even if you're just like David, and you come to a meeting and you talk to us about something that's on your mind, or you email the board, right? If we don't hear from the community, it's the same with the selectmen, it's the same with the BET, it's the same with the RTM. They're not actively all the time reaching out to the community. So it's incumbent on the community to make sure we all know what you're interested in.
Absolutely. Well,
just encouraging people to stay engaged.
Well, that's it. So you don't use your Board of Ed salary to pay your bills at home?
All right, so let me tell everybody the dirty little secret. We don't get paid. I know Joe. I know we told Joe he did, so don't anybody tell him. I know.
I was waiting for that check, Peter. When is it coming?
I'm going to get the big foam check, Joe. I swear to God, I'm going to get you one. It's going to have a big fat zero on it, but I'll sign it for you.
Oh, perfect.
All right, here's what you get for being on the board of ed. All right, here it is, big package.
Well, Peter, it's a pleasure working with you on the board of ed. Tim likes to keep these shows a half hour because I think he's trying to.
All right, let me tell Tim what the package is though, because Tim might want to run one day. He's got 5 kids.
Absolutely.
He's got a lot invested in this. You get a parking pass, so you can park anywhere in town because we have a lot of meetings. You get to hand your child their diploma at graduation, whether or not you're still on the board. Oh, and when you're done, you get a school bell. That's it.
School bell. I thought it was a pen.
8 years of service, and I think I get a day. I think when I'm done, Fred will give me the Peter Bernstein day where I can drive up the avenue the wrong way. So there you go, and I plan to take him up on it too.
Excellent. Now, Tim usually comes on here and concludes our program with some very intellectual observations he had from listening to us speak for a while. So, Tim, what sort of intellectual observations do you have for Peter that you might want to ask him before we conclude our program this evening?
Well, I'll just say that I thank you for your service, Peter, and it's too bad that you're going to retire in November, but you did great work. I remember working closely with our friend Stephen Walco, putting together New Lab because I had 5 graduates from there, so that was very important to me at that time. So I know how difficult it could be, and because that room was very charged with a lot of active people. So I again, thank you very much. And then I want to shoot back to David there. Was my daughter, I think, played with him in softball, and I didn't know when you said he was going to be on the show. I was like, okay, I don't know. And then he started speaking, and I was like, I've been to softball games where he's on the sidelines, and so he was very entertaining as well. But you know, it's good that he's still involved and he pushes his kids the way he does, and that's great to see. I'm glad he came on the show. But again, thanks, Peter, and. I don't know if I'll be a great supporter and I'll be in the room, but I don't know if I want to sit on stage like you had to do. That takes a lot of energy and control.
It does, but it's worth it in the end, right? I'm hoping to leave the place better than when I found it. COVID obviously has thrown us for a little bit of a loop, but hey, we're so happy. Basically, we are the shining star in Fairfield County. Other districts are calling us to ask how we're doing it, so right. We're very lucky right now.
We're proud to be part of this organization. So Peter, thanks for joining us. I do appreciate it. Tim, another good job. And as I said, this is Groundhog Day. So if we do relive this like the movie, we're going to see this interview time and time again. So let's hope we can move past this, or maybe not. Maybe we'll be doing this again tomorrow. After we wake up, we'll have this same interview again.
We're going to have to find, now we have some kind of White House connection. We're going to have to find somebody next week who has a White House connection. It's kind of a theme. So we're going to have to get the Greenwich resident. So she's going to have to come on the president's press secretary. We'll have to have her on the Greenwich Good News Game Plan and see what she has to say.
That'd be great.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, David. David's texting me. I wonder what he's texting me about. All right, guys. We'll see you. Thank you very much.